my god, is that Hayabusa? So, hi, hello, and welcome to a test ride. I got Danger Noodles with me. Wap-a-pow! And today we're at Monsterbike, borrowing a bike. A legend of a bike. This is the Suzuki Hayabusa 2021 edition. Let's take it for a ride.
Even if you're not into motorcycles, chances are that you've heard about the Suzuki GSX1300R or Hayabusa at some point. It was once the fastest production bike to have ever been made. The third generation of the former Speed King had been released in 2021. But is it still relevant today?
I have not been riding this, nor the previous version, so keep that in mind. This is not a comparison to the old version versus the new version.
The riding position mimics a sports bike position, but the distance from the seat to the clip-ons are definitely longer than your average sports bike. At one point I let my friend Danger Noodles borrow the Hayabusa while I got to ride his 2008 R1. That's when I very much realized how long the Hayabusa really was.
Alright, so that is my dude Danger Noodles on the Hayabusa. Can't believe I'm saying this, but this R1 is more comfortable than that for my back. As some of you guys know, I do struggle with my back on sports bikes, which is why I currently own a sports bike, the RS660, but it's a very kind sports bike.
Other than that, my legs needed constant circulation to not stiffen up completely, also not uncommon in the sports bike world. I was actually surprised over how comfortable the seat was though. I could ride most of the day without getting any major fatigue, just riding normally. Although I will say, if you ride on the highway for an hour straight, that was not a pleasant ride. And with a seat height of only 805mm, there was no issue handling the weight of the bike while at a standstill. The 1340cc engine has buttloads of torque in the low RPM range, and you could easily click it up in 6th gear at almost any given time without any complaints from the engine. Now, since this bike carries the Hayabusa name, I guess a lot of people was disappointed when they found out it only would have 190 horsepower. Now again, it is Euro 5 restricted, so I'm willing to bet that this engine has some very decent and capable tuning possibilities if you're willing to go the extra mile. But if you're not, there are certainly bikes out there with more horsepower that even weigh less. This is definitely another one of those bike designs that divide the biker world. The bodywork does, however, have a very specific function this time around, being as aerodynamic as possible, so that you can go as fast as you want, as efficiently through the wind as possible. Whether you like the design or not, it is definitely an attention grabber.
Like, it's so different from any other bike out there due to the aerodynamic bodywork and stuff like that. I've had multiple persons with this bike on a gas station just parking on the side of the street to just take a breather. I've never had another bike or ridden another bike where people have actually stopped, looked at it, tried to figure out what this thing is, and I don't think they succeed in figuring that out. And they take pictures of it, and that says something about the design of this bike and how special, I guess, and how foreign it is to other people. And I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing.
You can say what you will about the Suzuki Hayabusa, but it is definitely an eye-catcher. Now when I first got on this bike and rode it, I was really surprised over how easily this bike handled on the road. Just riding normally, you can easily flick this bike back and forth to a certain angle. Now I'm not saying you can completely look past that this bike is a monstrosity, but it didn't feel like this huge chunk of bike when you started riding it.
Like, this motorcycle isn't difficult to ride, and it's not heavy on like normal roads. I mean, look, I can flick this bike. That's barely giving it any effort whatsoever. It's very flickable for normal road use.
Now, obviously this thing wasn't made to roam around town, so let's talk speed. What makes me the most worried about riding this bike is that I, the rider of this missile, almost can't feel the difference between going 100 and 200 kilometers an hour. With its suspension being on the softer side and magnificent bodywork slicing through the wind, my only real reference as to what speed I am doing was my speedometer. It's definitely one of the most comfortable bikes out there at high speeds. But if we're talking track days on the Hayabusa, that's when you'll really start feeling the actual weight of this bike. I was absolutely exhausted after only being on track for 30 minutes. Hayabusa's Brembo calipers actually left me kind of disappointed at first. They didn't have that initial bite that I thought they'd have. But if you're willing to squeeze that brake just a little bit more and more and more and more, these brakes won't leave you wanting for anything more, as they are indeed very capable of stopping this bike. As for electronics, this bike has been equipped with a few goodies: quick shift blipper, cruise control, traction control, anti-lift control, and power/rider modes. Now, I don't know what kind of magic Suzuki has done to their quick shifter and gearbox, but this has to be the smoothest quick shift blipper I have ever had the pleasure of using. It honestly did not matter what RPM or speed you were going. It was silky smooth almost every freaking time. The anti-lift is very interesting to me and is something that I haven't had any experience with before. To kind of dumb it down, under hard acceleration, the lift control will moderate the amount of power the bike puts out to prevent the front wheel from getting light, and instead allowing it to maintain contact with the tarmac. It's like a wheelie control before you even wheelie.
So, after having this bike for the last couple of days, I mean, originally I thought it could maybe be Suzuki's take on like the big touring bikes, like the H2SX models and stuff like that. But after after having this bike and riding it for 3 days, it's just confirmed everything that I thought the Hayabusa was. And that is that this thing, it's built for speed. Like, you just take one look at the fairings, at the body of this motorcycle, and you realize that this thing is made for speed. And it's made for high speeds. I mean, that is originally what the Hayabusa was made for, was to win the speed race in Japan. But I thought maybe the 2021 model would maybe lean towards something a little bit, at least, more useful than just speed. But I mean, it functions as a normal motorcycle, don't get me wrong, but where this bike really shines is still at high speeds.
The 2021 Hayabusa is definitely not one of the fastest bikes out there no more. It almost feels like these neo-retro bikes that have come out the last couple of years, where it lives more on nostalgia and the Hayabusa name itself more than actually being the statement that the first generation was. Now, don't get me wrong, it is still a fast bike, but if you're just after the speed, you're probably better off getting a liter bike. And that just about sums up this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Now, on a personal note, my back is aching. It is hurting so freaking bad right now after only 3 days with this bike. I'm used to getting a lot of pain in my lower back when I ride these motorcycles, like sports bikes and I guess sports touring and just speed demons. So take that with a grain of salt.